It was supposed to be one of those days when problems don't even cross your mind. My family was gathered together, laughter bouncing off the walls, the smell of cake in the air, the sound of my granddaughter's giggle filling every corner of the house. For a moment, I let myself believe that everything was fine, that the quiet tension of the past months had been nothing more than my own imagination. But then, in the middle of Ava's birthday party, she walked up to me, squeezed my hand with the kind of urgency only a child can express, and whispered something that cracked the foundation of the day. "Grandma, please be careful. Mom and Dad are going to take your money." I froze, my smile still plastered on my face for the crowd, but my mind already spiraling. 6:57 a.m., earlier that day. The morning light was pale and hesitant, creeping through the sheer curtains in my kitchen. The kettle hissed on the stove, and I sat with both hands wrapped around my coffee mug. 34 years in this house, and morning still had a certain ritual: coffee first, conversation later. The phone rang sharply, slicing through the calm. I glanced at the screen of the landline. Michael, my son. The last person I expected to call this early. "Mom," he began quickly, too quickly. "I know it's early, but hear me out." I tightened my grip on the mug. "Go on." "Well, it's about today. We'd love for you to come to Lily's party a bit earlier, say around 1:30? Before the other guests arrive." "Michael," I said slowly, "you've never had to convince me to attend my granddaughter's birthday. I've never missed one." I know," he replied, but there was a faint edge in his voice, like he was reading from a script. I heard a muffled voice in the background, probably Vanessa, his wife. She's been planning this for weeks. Wants to make sure you're there early so we can talk about some family stuff." I set the spoon down in my mug. "What kind of family stuff?" "Oh, just the future. Staying connected. Vanessa has a few ideas." Vanessa. The same woman who, in the 10 years I'd known her, had mastered the art of polite distance. Always perfectly cordial, never warm. I didn't answer him directly, just said, "Of course. I wouldn't miss it." "Perfect. And Mom, just keep an open mind, okay?" After the call ended, I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, the quiet pressing in. My eyes drifted to the fridge. A drawing from Lily hung there, for stick figures beneath a crooked sun: me, Dad, Mom, and Grandma. Purple crayon, her favorite. Lily was the light in a life that had dimmed after my husband, Richard, passed 3 years ago. He'd been a steady, perceptive man. And in one of his last moments in the hospital, smelling faintly of bleach and inevitability, he'd told me, "Promise me you'll protect Lily, and keep an eye on Michael. He's not as strong as he thinks, and weakness makes dangerous choices when someone whispers in your ear." That morning, I couldn't shake Richard's voice. By 1:30 p.m., I stood at Michael's front door, gifts in hand, a Lego skyscraper set for Lily, a pale blue bicycle with a basket, and a bouquet of white roses for Vanessa. My smile was ready, but my guard was already up. Vanessa opened the door with almost exaggerated cheer. "Margaret. You look wonderful. Come in." Red flag number 1. From the living room, Michael's voice called out. "There she is. The woman who taught me everything I know." Red flag number 2. And then Lily ran to me, arms tight around my waist, whispering, "Grandma, please be careful. Mom and Dad are going to take your money after the party." That was red flag number 3, and the most dangerous of them all. I didn't react to Lily's whisper the way she probably expected. I didn't gasp. I didn't pull her aside right then and there. Instead, I knelt, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and said softly, "We'll talk later, sweetheart. For now, just enjoy your cake." Because if what she said was true, then I couldn't afford to show my hand. Vanessa hovered nearby, her glass of wine catching the light like she was on a stage. She was wearing that pale cream blouse, the one I'd seen on her Instagram just 2 weeks ago with the caption "Manifesting Abundance." Michael kept moving through the crowd, his voice louder than anyone else's, telling jokes that didn't quite land. The laughter from their friends was polite. I found a corner seat at the edge of the room. From there, I could observe without being observed. It's a habit I picked up in my 40s, when I was still running the bookkeeping for the supply company Richard and I built from the ground up. You learn to see patterns, which clients pay on time, which ones lie about their numbers, which employees are starting to slip cash from the till. You learn not to jump at the first sign of trouble, but to watch. And Michael hadn't always been like this. When he was younger, he'd been bright. He had a good heart. But he was also impulsive, always looking for the quick win, the shortcut, the easy path. I remember the first time I noticed the shift. It was after Richard passed. Michael had come to me one evening, his voice unusually soft, asking for help just until the new job starts. I didn't hesitate, I wrote the check. The job didn't start. Another check followed. Then a transfer. Then just a small loan for Vanessa's business course, a course she never actually took. Over 3 years, I'd given them over $15,000. Each time, they promised it was the last. Each time, I believed them because I wanted to. Richard was the opposite of Michael in that way. He used to say, "Don't lend money you can't afford to never see again. And never to family, unless you're prepared to lose both the money and the relationship." I'd always thought that was cynical. Now, sitting in Michael's living room with a paper plate of cake in my lap, I realized it might have just been realistic. Vanessa disappeared into the kitchen for a few minutes. Michael followed. From where I sat, I could see the sliver of the doorway. They stood close, speaking in low tones. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read Michael's body language. Leaning in. Jaw tight. Vanessa nodding, but with the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. When they came back out, Michael had that same rehearsed brightness from the phone call that morning. That's when Lily tugged at my hand again, her eyes darting toward her parents. I leaned down. "Later," I whispered. "We'll talk later." But inside, a slow, cold certainty began to take root. The rest of the afternoon was a performance. Michael made a point of announcing my generosity to anyone within earshot, telling stories of how I'd helped them in tough times, always framing it as a loving sacrifice, never as the pattern it had become. Vanessa kept refilling my glass, which I pretended to sip from but never really drank. Every so often, I caught Lily's eyes across the room. She looked older than her years in those moments, like she was carrying something heavy. By the time the party ended and I was back in my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than I realized, I'd made my decision. If they were planning to take my money, I wasn't going to wait to find out how. I was going to find out exactly what they were doing, and I was going to make sure they couldn't touch a cent of it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every glance, every half-smile, every too careful word from that afternoon. Lily's voice, so small and serious, kept cutting through everything else. "They're going to take your money after the party." At 2 in the morning, I got up and made tea, sitting at the kitchen table in the dim light. The steam curled upward like a thought I couldn't quite catch. I reached for the black file folder in the bottom drawer of my desk, the one I hadn't opened in years, and laid it in front of me. Inside were the receipts of my generosity, bank transfers to Michael, checks written for Vanessa's education, credit card bills I'd quietly paid off for them. I flipped through them slowly, my pulse steadying with each page. It was all their dates, amounts, even the little notes in the memo line where I'd written things like "just until next paycheck" or "hope this helps." I remembered writing those with such trust. Around 4:15, I opened my laptop and logged into my online banking. My eyes went straight to the account I kept for emergencies, the one only Richard and I had ever known about. The balance was the same as last month, but that didn't mean much. If they were planning something legal, something with paperwork, they wouldn't need to touch my account yet. They could be arranging access through power of attorney, or adding themselves to my accounts without me even realizing, if they had the right documents. I thought of what my neighbor Dorothy had said, seeing them leave the bank with a stack of official papers. By 6 a.m., I decided what I needed to do first. I pulled on a cardigan, grabbed my keys, and drove to the branch of Brookage First Bank as soon as it opened. The manager, Mr. Whitaker, had known Richard and me for years. When I told him I wanted to review all account authorizations, he didn't ask why. He simply printed the paperwork and slid it across the desk. My stomach tightened as I scanned the pages. No changes. My signature was still the only one on file. That gave me some relief, but only a little. Because if they didn't already have access, then they were still working on getting it. And once certain documents were filed, it could be too late to stop them. I asked Mr. Whitaker to flag my accounts for any activity involving new signatories or power of attorney forms. He agreed, promising to call me personally if anything came through. I thanked him, but inside, I knew that wasn't enough. I needed to be ahead of them, not just waiting to be notified. The next step was my safe deposit box. Inside, along with some of Richard's old watches and our marriage certificate, were property deeds, stock certificates, and my will. I checked each document carefully, imagining Vanessa's thin fingers flipping through them while I wasn't looking. They were untouched. But a thought began to gnaw at me. If they couldn't get to my bank accounts directly, maybe they would try through the house. The house was paid off. Selling it could mean hundreds of thousands in their pocket if they had control. Back home, I called an old friend, Catherine Bell, a notary and estate planner. I didn't give her all the details over the phone, but I told her I needed to update my will and put certain protections in place immediately. She agreed to see me that afternoon. Before hanging up, she said something that stayed with me. Margaret, if someone close to you is planning something, the biggest mistake you can make is assuming they'll hesitate because they care. By midday, I was sitting across from Catherine in her office, the smell of paper and ink sharp in the air. We worked through the documents, a new will, a trust that would ensure Lily's future, and a clause that explicitly excluded anyone who attempted to coerce or defraud me. Catherine watched me sign each page, her expression careful but not pitying. She'd seen this before, probably more times than I could imagine. When I left her office, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove past Michael and Vanessa's house. Their car was in the driveway. For a moment, I considered stopping, walking up to the door, and telling them I knew. But I kept driving. They didn't need to know I was onto them. Not yet. I wanted them to think I was still the same trusting mother who believed every story they told. Let them think I was soft. Let them think I was asleep. That night, I placed the updated documents in my safe deposit box and hid the only spare key somewhere no one would think to look, inside the hollow of an old sewing kit Richard's mother had given me. Then I sat back at my kitchen table, the quiet pressing in again. I wasn't sure yet what Michael and Vanessa's exact plan was, but I knew one thing for certain: whatever they thought they were going to take from me, they would leave with nothing. And maybe, just maybe, I'd take something from them instead. 2 days later, Michael called again. His voice was light, but I could hear the tightness underneath. "Hey, Mom. Vanessa and I were thinking maybe you could come over for dinner this weekend. Just us, no big crowd." I agreed without hesitation, my tone warm, almost cheerful. Inside, I was already planning. I wanted to see them in their own space without the distraction of guests. If they were going to make a move, they might test the waters first. Saturday came gray and damp, the kind of weather that made the air smell like wet pavement. I arrived with a bottle of wine I knew neither of them particularly liked, a small trick to see if they'd pretend otherwise. Vanessa opened the door, smile sharp as glass. "Margaret. So good to see you. Come in, come in." The table was set too neatly, every fork aligned as if for inspection. Michael poured me a glass of wine immediately, insisting I just relax before dinner. We sat, made small talk. They asked about my health, my neighbors, even my garden, subjects they had never shown much interest in before. Then, between bites of roast chicken, Michael leaned forward. "Mom, we've been talking about the future. You're living alone in that big house. It's a lot to take care of. Don't you think it might be easier to downsize? Move into something more manageable?" I swallowed slowly. I like my house. Your father and I built that life together. Vanessa jumped in, her voice all soft concern. "Of course, and it's beautiful. But we just worry about you. And, managing finances can get complicated," she trailed off, giving Michael a look. He picked it up instantly. "We've been doing a lot of research, and there are ways we could help. Like, if you gave us power of attorney, we could make sure everything's paid on time, that you're protected. We'd handle the paperwork, so you don't have to stress." It was almost perfect, the phrasing, the tone, the feigned care. They'd rehearsed this. I could see it in the rhythm of their exchange, the way Vanessa's eyes flicked to him right before she spoke, like a cue. I put my fork down, looking between them with what I hoped was just the right mix of surprise and gratitude. "That's thoughtful of you." Inside, my pulse was steady, cold. This was the plan. Not theft in the dark, but theft in daylight, dressed up as hell. With power of attorney, they could sell the house, drain accounts, move assets, all legally. Michael smiled, relief flickering across his face. "We can talk more about it. No rush. We just want what's best for you." I nodded, letting the moment sit, letting them think they'd planted the seed. But I already had Catherine's updated documents locked away, with clauses that made any such attempt null and void. If they filed anything, it would hit a wall so hard they'd choke on the dust. Dinner ended with polite hugs, promises to keep the conversation going. When I stepped outside into the cool night, I pulled my coat tighter around me. My mind was no longer wondering if they would try, but when. The following morning, I called Dorothy. "Would you be up for a little favor?" I asked. Dorothy was the sort who noticed everything without trying, and people tended to overlook her. Perfect for what I needed. I asked her to keep an eye out for Michael and Vanessa's visits to the bank or meetings with lawyers. I didn't tell her the whole story, just enough for her to understand it mattered. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with a small tape recorder, the kind Richard had once used for dictating letters, and a notepad. I began writing a list of possible angles they could take, along with the countermeasures I'd already set in place. The recorder was for something else entirely. If they brought up the topic again, I would have their words, their tone, their rehearsed lines captured. By the end of the week, Dorothy called. Her voice was low. "Saw them at the bank again, Margaret. And this time, they weren't smiling. They went in with a man in a suit, came out about 40 minutes later. He was carrying a folder." I thanked her, my fingers drumming against the countertop after I hung up. Whatever they were planning, it was moving fast. I decided the next time they tried to bring it up, I wouldn't just listen. I'd pull them further in, let them think I was wavering, long enough to see exactly what papers they'd try to put in front of me. Because now, it wasn't just about protecting what was mine. It was about seeing how far they'd go, and making sure they never had the chance to try again. On the kitchen table in front of Marianne lay a yellow notepad, beside it a cup of coffee gone cold. She stared at the words she'd written as if, by sheer focus, they might transform into armor. The early light caught every crease in her face, but her gaze was steady in a way it hadn't been in years. James Whitaker, vice president of Brookage First Bank, would be getting a call at 9 sharp. She had known him since the days when she and Edward had taken out a loan for the warehouse. He'd been young then, overly ambitious perhaps, but with one quality she valued now: he remembered faces and the stories that went with them. That, she knew, could be her first advantage. At 8:59, she already had the receiver in hand, fingers gripping her notebook tightly. Marianne, the voice on the other end, recognized her instantly. "How are you?" "Better than I could be, James, but I have a matter that can't wait," she said evenly. "I need every transaction on my accounts frozen for anyone but me personally. And I want no access granted without my written consent." There was a brief silence. "You suspect." "I don't suspect. I know." By 9:15, her financial lines were walled off like a fortress. The next call was to Catherine Bell, her notary. They agreed to meet after lunch to go through every document, powers of attorney, her will, any deeds or gift transfers. All the while, her phone lay face down. Brandon had been sending messages, first warm, then insistent, then edged with irritation. She didn't reply. Before heading to the notary, Marianne unlocked the safe in her study. From it, she took a black envelope labeled Ava. Inside was a savings book for the account she'd opened the day her granddaughter was born. Not a large sum, but one she'd quietly built over the years. Now she decided the money would be moved to another bank, into a sealed account only Ava could access when she turned 18. She moved with method, not panic. Still, as she stepped out of the house, her eyes fell on Edward's pickup under the tarp. "This is for her, Edward," she murmured. "And for you too." By the time she started the car, she knew one thing. That evening, Brandon and Rebecca would learn their plan had crumbled before it even began. And worst for them, there would be no way to rebuild it. The call came just after sunset. Marianne had been sitting by the fire with a book she wasn't reading, waiting for it. Brandon's number flashed across the screen. She let it ring twice before answering. "Mom," his voice was tight, clipped. We went by the bank today. They said there's been some kind of hold placed on your accounts. Did you know about this?" Marianne closed her book slowly, letting the silence stretch. "Yes," she said at last. "I asked for it." "You asked for it?" His voice rose. "Why?" "You've made it impossible for us for anyone, to help you with your finances." "That's the point, dear." In the background, she could hear Rebecca's sharper tone, a hiss, ask her about the power of attorney. Brandon came back on, struggling to keep his voice steady. "We were just trying to make things easier for you, Mom. This feels like you don't trust us." "I don't," she said simply. The silence on the other end was heavy. Rebecca broke it, her voice sugar-sweet and strained. "Marianne, surely there's been a misunderstanding. We had plans for—" "I know," Marianne cut in, her tone level. "I've seen enough of your plans to know where they lead. You should also know that every asset I own is now locked in ways you can't undo. If you try, the law will be the one calling you next." There was a sharp inhale from Rebecca, then the muffled sound of her moving away from the phone. Brandon tried one last angle. "Mom, this is going to make things very awkward between us." Marianne let herself smile, just a little. "I can live with awkward. What I can't live with is you thinking my money is yours." She ended the call before he could respond. Outside, the wind rattled the bare branches against the window, a sound almost like applause. She set her phone down, poured herself a cup of tea, and for the first time in weeks, she felt completely at peace. By Monday morning, Marianne's plan was already in motion. At 8:02 a.m., she was seated in the quiet, wood-paneled office of James Whitaker, the vice president at Brookage First Bank. He had been her banker for over 15 years, a man with silver hair and a habit of straightening his tie every time he was about to deliver bad news. She didn't give him the chance. "James," she began, her tone as even as a courtroom stenographer's, "I need to put an immediate freeze on all joint access to my accounts. That includes anyone who may have been added as a co-signer in the last 30 days. I want verification of any recent paperwork, signatures, date stamps, notarization. All of it." He blinked. "Has there been an incident?" "There's about to be," she replied. "So I'd like to head it off." James nodded, pulling her file with a kind of careful respect. It took less than 10 minutes to confirm what she already suspected. Someone had requested a meeting the previous Thursday to discuss streamlining financial oversight for her personal accounts. Brandon's name was on the appointment log. Rebecca's signature appeared on a preliminary draft of a durable power of attorney. It wasn't filed yet. But it was ready. Marianne left the bank with a sealed folder tucked under her arm and drove straight to Catherine Bell's office, a notary she trusted. Catherine was brisk, no nonsense, and had the kind of memory that made her dangerous to liars. Within an hour, Marianne had revoked any and all standing authorizations, updated her will to place Ava's inheritance in a trust, and signed a directive that explicitly barred Brandon or Rebecca from acting as her financial proxy under any circumstances. By the time she returned home, the roses in the hallway had begun to wilt. She left them there. Let them fade. That evening, Brandon called. His voice was bright in the way a child's is when he's about to ask for something big. "Hey, Mom. So, Rebecca and I were thinking we could swing by later this week. Just to talk through." "I know," she said. Silence. Then, cautiously, "You know what? I know what you were planning. And I want you to understand something, Brandon. I am not an easy target. Not anymore. You will not take what I've built. You will not use Ava as a bridge to my trust. If you try, you will lose more than my money. You will lose me." The line went quiet. She could almost hear him calculating, searching for the angle. Finally, "Mom, you're blowing this out of proportion." She hung up. In the quiet after, Marianne sat at her kitchen table, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of Ava's latest drawing on the fridge. She knew there would be fallout, the kind that fractures families for good. But the voice of her husband was still there, steady in her mind: protect Ava. Watch Brandon. And she intended to do exactly that. The following days were tense, like violin strings on the verge of snapping. Marianne felt she had truly entered a new game where every move could have fatal consequences. The first blow came the very next morning with a call from Rebecca. "Mom, let's have a grown-up talk." Her voice was insistent and a little cold. "You don't understand how important this is for Ava. We just want to help." Marianne kept her composure, calm but firm. "I don't need help from those who try to take control of my finances behind my back." Silence. Then the line crackled. The call dropped. She knew this was only the beginning. That very evening, Brandon showed up, under the pretense of just talking. His face was shadowed with worry, but his eyes still held a manipulative fire. "Mom, please think about the family. It's just a misunderstanding. We don't want to harm you. You know how much I appreciate your support." Marianne looked at him coldly. "Appreciate? You call it appreciation that I paid your bills for years while you drank and chased doubtful schemes? My money is not your personal cash register." She saw his face flare with anger, then disappointment. She didn't back down. This war was not new to her, but now she was ready to fight it to the end. The following days were filled with conflicts, phone calls with ultimatums, letters with legal threats, unexpected visits from friends and acquaintances trying to persuade her to soften her stance. But Marianne was unyielding. She hired a lawyer specializing in protecting seniors from financial abuse. She kept records, gathered evidence. Every penny that disappeared without her knowledge became a new brick in her wall of defense. Alongside this battle, she tried to maintain her connection with Ava. For the little girl, the conflict was painful, but it only brought her closer to her grandmother. They spent evenings drawing, reading stories, and planning a future where nothing could tear them apart. Despite everything, Marianne knew this was just the beginning of a long road. But now she was ready. Behind her stood the memory of Edward, his advice, and his love. And on her shoulders rested the future of little Ava, whom she was determined to protect at any cost. Weeks passed, each day heavier than the last. Marianne's home, once a sanctuary filled with warmth and memories, now felt like a battleground. Every knock on the door, every unexpected call, sent a ripple of tension through her chest. Yet, she refused to let fear rule her. One afternoon, her lawyer, Catherine Bell, arrived with a thick folder of documents. "We've prepared everything to establish your full control over your finances and to challenge any unauthorized transactions," Catherine said firmly, placing the papers on Marianne's kitchen table. Marianne nodded, feeling a surge of relief mixed with resolve. "They underestimated me," she murmured. "But I won't let them win." That evening, Marianne invited Ava over for a quiet dinner. The little girl's eyes sparkled with innocence, yet behind them lay a wisdom beyond her years. "Grandma," Ava whispered as they cleared the table, "I want to help you. Maybe I'm small, but I'm brave, like you said." Marianne smiled, tears threatening to fall. "You are my bravest girl. Together, we'll get through this." Days later, the family gathered for another event. This time, Marianne was prepared. She watched Brandon and Rebecca carefully, noting every glance and whispered conversation. When Brandon approached her with his usual charm, she met his gaze steadily. "I'm not a victim anymore," she said quietly but clearly. "If you want to protect Ava, you'll respect my decisions and stop trying to control my life." Brandon's face tightened, but he said nothing. Marianne felt a strange mix of victory and sadness. The family she loved was fracturing, but she was no longer powerless. As the sun set, Marianne stood by the window, watching Ava play outside. She thought of Edward's words and promised herself that no matter what happened, she would protect her granddaughter's future, a future built on love, strength, and truth. The days that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and careful planning. Marianne worked closely with Catherine to secure her financial affairs. They drafted new legal documents, updated bank authorizations, and even involved a financial advisor who specialized in elder care. Despite the storm brewing around her, Marianne found strength in the small moments. Morning coffees with Ava, laughter shared over puzzles, and quiet evenings revisiting old photo albums reminded her why she fought so fiercely. One afternoon, Brandon showed up unannounced at Marianne's doorstep. His expression was guarded, a mixture of frustration and something she couldn't quite place, maybe regret. "I want to talk," he said. Marianne didn't hesitate. "If it's about respect and honesty, then yes, we need to talk." Brandon sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I was wrong. I got caught up in things, and I didn't see how much it hurt you. I want to make it right." Marianne studied him carefully. Could she trust him? Was this genuine or another attempt at control? "I'm willing to listen," she replied, "but this time on my terms." Over the next weeks, they met often, not as mother and son, but as two people trying to rebuild trust. Brandon began attending counseling and took steps to stabilize his life. Slowly, the tension that had once filled the house began to lift. Yet Marianne knew the real test was ahead, protecting Ava from the undercurrents she had glimpsed, the manipulations and the hidden agendas. She became more vigilant, more protective, ensuring her granddaughter's innocence was shielded from harm. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset paint the sky, Ava leaned against Marianne and whispered, "Thank you for being my hero, Grandma." Marianne smiled, her heart full. The battle was far from over, but with love and courage as her armor, she was ready to face whatever came next. Days turned into weeks, and Marianne's careful planning began to pay off. With Catherine's legal guidance, she managed to place safeguards around her assets, making it nearly impossible for Brandon and Rebecca to access her finances without her explicit approval. Despite the legal victories, the emotional toll weighed heavily on her. Trust, once broken, is not easily mended. Marianne found herself watching Brandon's every move, searching for signs of relapse or deceit. But slowly, she noticed changes. He was more present, more honest, and even began spending time with Ava in ways he hadn't before. One afternoon, Marianne received a call from Rebecca. Her voice was cautious but kinder than before. "Mom, I want to apologize for everything. We all got caught up in things. I want us to be a family again." Marianne considered the words carefully before replying. "Rebecca, actions speak louder than words. Let's take it one step at a time." As the family tentatively began to heal, Marianne's relationship with Ava deepened. They shared secrets, dreams, and plans for the future. Ava's bright spirit became a beacon of hope for Marianne, reminding her of the strength that comes from love. One morning, as they prepared breakfast together, Ava turned to her grandmother and said, "I want to help you protect our family, Grandma." Marianne smiled warmly. "And you will, my dear. Together, we're unstoppable." The next morning, Marianne woke up with a determination she hadn't felt in a long time. She knew that no one would deceive or humiliate her anymore. Right after breakfast, she called James Whitaker, the bank's vice president, with whom she had a good relationship. She explained the situation and asked him to prepare all the documents related to her financial accounts and powers of attorney. Next, she scheduled an appointment with Catherine Bell, the notary, to sign new documents that would strengthen her position and protect her assets. Marianne felt a warm sense of empowerment spreading through her body. She was no longer a defenseless grandmother. While handling these matters, she tried to maintain a close bond with Ava. They painted together, built Lego sets, and Ava gradually became her little anchor in this difficult time. That evening, Marianne received a call from Brandon. His voice was softer than before. He apologized for his earlier behavior and invited her to talk to clear the air. Marianne sensed that this could be the beginning of something new, whether true reconciliation or another trap. She was ready to meet, but on her own terms. That day marked the start of her new fight, a fight for respect, dignity, and family peace that she had earned many years ago. And now Marianne was certain she would not give up. Marianne spent the following days carefully gathering evidence and organizing her finances. She reviewed every transaction, noting suspicious withdrawals and unexplained transfers. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became that Brandon and Rebecca had been taking advantage of her trust for years. Determined not to be a victim, Marianne reached out to a trusted family lawyer, explaining her situation in detail. The lawyer assured her that there were legal ways to challenge the misuse of her funds and to safeguard Ava's future. Together, they began drafting plans to protect her estate and ensure that Brandon and Rebecca could not access her money without oversight. Meanwhile, Ava continued to be Marianne's beacon of hope. The little girl's courage in speaking up had been a catalyst, and Marianne felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but for Ava's sake, she was ready to face whatever came. One afternoon, Brandon came to the house, asking to talk again. This time, Marianne was calm and collected. She listened to his excuses but firmly told him that any further attempts to control her finances would be met with legal action. Brandon's expression darkened, but Marianne no longer felt afraid. As the weeks passed, Marianne strengthened her legal protections and began reconnecting with distant relatives and old friends who had been unaware of the family tensions. With their support, she started to rebuild her life on her own terms. Marianne understood that forgiveness might never come, but her resolve to protect Ava and herself was unshakable. The birthday party that once seemed like a joyful gathering had become a turning point, a moment when she chose to fight for her dignity and love, no matter the cost. Marianne's days became a careful balance of vigilance and healing. She limited contact with Brandon and Rebecca, only speaking through her lawyer when necessary. Each phone call or message was scrutinized, and she refused to be drawn into their manipulations or guilt trips. The emotional weight was heavy, but Marianne reminded herself constantly, this was about protecting Ava and preserving the family's future. At home, she created a small sanctuary, a corner filled with Ava's drawings, books, and little treasures, a place where they could feel safe and free from tension. Ava blossomed in this environment, her laughter returning and her curiosity renewed. Watching her granddaughter thrive was Marianne's greatest comfort and motivation. One afternoon, while going through old photo albums, Marianne stumbled upon pictures of Edward and herself during happier times. She allowed herself a few quiet tears but quickly dried them, feeling Edward's steady presence as a source of strength. She realized that while the past could not be changed, her future was still hers to shape. Marianne's lawyer arranged for a meeting with a financial advisor to review her accounts and set up safeguards, including joint oversight and limits on withdrawals. She also updated her will, ensuring Ava would be protected no matter what happened. The day finally came when Marianne had to confront the family again, not with anger, but with clear boundaries and confidence. At a small gathering organized by a distant cousin, Marianne spoke openly about her plans and the importance of respect and honesty. Some family members expressed support, while others kept their distance, but Marianne no longer sought approval. She had found her voice. In the quiet evenings that followed, Marianne and Ava often sat by the window, watching the sunset. "You're very brave, Grandma," Ava said one day, squeezing her hand. Marianne smiled, knowing the greatest battles are not always loud, sometimes they're fought quietly, with love and courage. And for the first time in a long while, Marianne felt a sense of peace settling over her life. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she was no longer walking it alone or in fear. Despite Marianna's careful preparation and growing resolve, the weight of betrayal and mounting stress began to overwhelm her. One late evening, as she sat alone at her kitchen table, going over the tangled web of financial documents and trying to piece together the truth, a sudden wave of dizziness swept over her. Her vision blurred, the room tilted, and before she could call for help, she collapsed. She was found unconscious by a neighbor and rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis was grim, a severe stroke, leaving Marianna incapacitated and vulnerable. The doctors warned that her recovery would be long and uncertain. While Marianna lay in the sterile, cold hospital room, barely able to move or speak, Brandon and Rebecca acted swiftly. Armed with legal documents forged through manipulation and deceit, they met with lawyers and bankers. Quietly, they began draining her accounts, selling off assets, and changing the terms of her will. Their smiles and false concern were masks hiding their true intentions, to seize control of everything Marianna had worked for. The once vibrant home where laughter and memories filled every corner grew quiet and empty. The warmth Marianna had tried so hard to protect was replaced by cold legal notices and locked doors. Ava, the bright and courageous granddaughter, refused to be silenced. Despite the heartbreak of seeing her beloved grandmother in such a fragile state, she visited Marianna every day. She held her grandmother's hand, whispered stories of hope, and promised to fight for her, for justice, for truth, for the family's honor. But the battle ahead was daunting. Marianna's stroke left her weakened and unable to defend herself in court or manage her affairs. The betrayal by her own son stung deepest of all, a painful reminder that even blood ties can be broken by greed. Yet, beneath the hospital's fluorescent lights and amid the beeping machines, a flicker of defiance remained alive in Marianna's heart. Slowly, with physical therapy and the unwavering support of Ava and a few loyal friends, she began to regain strength. Determined not to let her legacy be stolen, Marianna vowed to take back what was hers, to expose the lies, to reclaim her dignity, and to ensure that Ava would never suffer from such betrayal. This was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning of a fight for survival, love, and justice. Months passed since Marianna's stroke, and the quiet hospital room had witnessed more than just her physical struggle. It had become the battleground for her fight to reclaim her life and legacy. Though weakened, Marianna's spirit refused to be crushed. Ava's unwavering devotion became a beacon of hope, a reminder that love can overcome even the darkest betrayals. With the help of a compassionate lawyer, Catherine Bell, Marianna began the slow process of untangling the web of deceit her son Brandon and Rebecca had woven. The financial abuses, forged documents, and hidden transactions were meticulously uncovered, piece by piece. The courtroom became her arena, where truth battled greed, and justice was the prize. Brandon's cold facade cracked under scrutiny. Evidence of his manipulation and exploitation was laid bare, shattering the illusion of the devoted son he had pretended to be. The judge, moved by the clear injustice, ruled decisively in Marianna's favor, restoring her control over her finances and properties. Rebecca's schemes unraveled alongside. But the victory was bittersweet. Marianna's recovery was slow and filled with setbacks. Simple tasks required immense effort, and every day was a reminder of the price she paid for trusting those closest to her. Yet, surrounded by family and friends who had not abandoned her, Marianna found strength in small joys, the laughter of Ava, the scent of fresh roses, the warmth of sunlight through the window. Her home, once threatened with loss, became a symbol of resilience. Marianna restored the garden she and Edward had planted years ago, each bloom a testament to endurance and hope. She started volunteering at the local community center, sharing her story to warn others about the dangers of blind trust and the importance of vigilance. More than money or possessions, Marianna reclaimed her dignity and peace of mind. The bond with Ava grew stronger, forged in the fires of hardship and love. Together, they dreamed of a future where family meant protection, not betrayal. As Marianna watched Ava play in the garden, a soft smile touched her lips. Life had dealt her a harsh hand, but she had played it with courage and grace. The shadows of the past no longer held her captive. Instead, they illuminated the path she had chosen, to live fully, to love fiercely, and to never give up. This was Marianna's true legacy, a story not of loss, but of hope reborn, a testament to the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. We post new videos regularly with captivating stories, heartfelt moments, and much more. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for being part of our community.